Live from the Big Tomato, it's Kings Pod 2020 with your hosts, Geoff and Toke. Geoff, are you entertained?
You know what, man? We got some great content for the podcast, but I'm not entertained at all. Some of the things that are, what the biggest problem is? When your head coach is the most entertaining part of your team, you got big problems. Because he is by far the most entertaining part. Not in a good way.
So, I do have the video, but I think everyone's seen it by now, so it's kind of pointless. Just in case you have somehow lived under a rock for the last 2 weeks, I think the day after we recorded our last episode, Doug Christie had this very bizarre press conference before the game. I believe it was before the game against Denver on NBC, which I took it as, because the national media was there, he wanted to kind of send a message out there about how only Rick Adelman and Jerry Brown, apparently, I think he meant Mike Brown, I don't know, it could be Jerry Brown, are the only ones who don't know the pain of being a Sacramento Kings head coach, because those are the only two Kings head coaches who made the playoffs, right? And he really was drawing into like the city, and it's the rah-rah stuff that we talked about before the season started. And it's like, look, you got Zach LaVine, you got DeMar DeRozan, you got Sabonis, you got all these guys. Probably DeRozan and Russell Westbrook, remember those Kings teams that Doug played for? Mm-hmm. But everyone else on the team's too young. Like Sabonis doesn't remember the Kings being good ever.
Right.
So what you're trying to do, if you're Doug Christie, is you're trying to draw from this like thing from all these players who have no connections at a fundamental level. They have no connection to the city or the franchise prior to them joining the franchise. So like they don't have this Sacramento pride. So I think that the rah-rah stuff, when he couples it with like Sacramento pride, really falls on deaf ears. I don't know where he's going with it. And I think it's just not a good look. It's unprofessional. So, what are your thoughts, Geoff?
I think it's like what we've been saying. When you have a hire like Doug Christie, who was hired specifically and only because he was here in what we'll call the quote unquote heyday, where we didn't win championships, we just made it to the Western Conference Finals. He's too close. He's too close to the whole situation, and he's too emotionally invested in Sacramento. And like you said, no one else on the team or even in the front office really has that level of emotional investment. The front office is trying to play off that emotional investment specifically to sell tickets, in my opinion, because it certainly hasn't been a success from the standpoint of wins and losses. So I think that they are going with the strategy that the only way we're going to sell tickets is if we have somebody who the Kings traditionally love in some of these positions. But what really stuck out to me from Doug's press conference and from his statements was when he was calling out the haters and the people who are not convinced and basically talking bad about the Kings and all that. But then you go out and you lay an egg that night, and then you lay an egg the next night, and you lay an egg the next 6 games. So we have the benefit of hindsight as we're recording today, because we've played 8 games since that statement, I believe. And we've lost all 8 games by over 10 points. And
we played 6 games. I just counted.
Okay.
But yeah, so, whatever. It might as well have been.
Sorry, 1 on an 8-game losing streak. So he said that after we'd lost 2 in a row, and we've lost 6 subsequent games.
It feels like it's been 80 games already, but
that's it. And so it's I think what confused me about his statement was that he must have been really convinced that he was going to see a bounce back. He must have been really convinced that what he was telling the team, and the way they were responding, that he was going to see something out of these guys that was like, see, I told you. And
he basically fired his nukes.
That's what I'm saying. He launched everything. Like, and his expectation clearly was that the team was going to be like, oh, dang, coach is pissed. We better get our act together. And they went the other way. They have more actively quit on the team in the subsequent 6 games than they did in the first 2 games of this losing streak. And so what cards do you have to play now? And like I said, when you have the benefit of hindsight like we do, you can kind of see Doug's transition as the post-game pressers have gone on, where it's like the stages of grief. It's like
it's the stages of grief.
It's so really crazy. It lines up
perfectly.
Anger. Like he started with anger. I don't even know what the stages are, but you go through all
bargaining.
Of them. Right.
It's
but he like, and you clearly look at the last night. Like last night they lost to the Memphis Grizzlies by 41 points. There was no anger.
I gotta admit, I actually thought they were gonna win last night, because you look at the Kings and you say, well, this isn't like a 15-win team. This is like a 25-win team. And if you're going to win a game, it's going to be against another team that's on a 5 or 6 game losing streak that's 1 game better than you. I think they were 4-11 going. Like it's like, oh no,
and
this is a winnable
game. And they're down their best 2 players.
No Jaw, no JJJ. Which, by the way, just as a side note, have we ever like really talked about Ja Morant be named Ja?
No.
Like Ja Rule was like
has not come up.
Which Ja is not even Ja Rule's name. That's an acronym for Jeffrey Atkins. But Ja.
The guy's name's
it's
Ja.
like it sounds like a Chappelle Show skit. Anyway, look. I want to play a clip here from the prestigious Sam Amick of a variety of things. I think he's with The Athletic or whatever now. So
gets me, and that I think is ill-advised, is the return to the Kings-centric messaging in terms of the history of this organization, and and the whole thing about how Rick Adelman and Jerry Reynolds are the only coaches who can understand the pain of Kings fans. It's a clever way of saying that, like, like just all the other time, like all the other, NBA people who didn't have Kings ties, who came through this organization, they don't matter. They don't count. Well, guess what? Like a lot of them, like their negative experiences in Sacramento, those are the things that then they took with them to the rest of the NBA, and then and that have damaged their reputation. And so
100%.
That's where I always think it's a mistake. I've just never seen ever an organization that leans so heavily on an era that, while it was exciting and entertaining and promising, and yes, they're one of the best teams to never win the title. It's bonkers that they keep leaning on that 23 years later.
Talk with
bonkers. It is bonkers.
Look, I know who's behind this, but for my own social reasons, I won't say the name. It is someone on the business side of the Kings that has, I think, decided from a marketing standpoint that we need to keep going back to the well on the nostalgia thing. But I think, what's a little bit more sinister and insidious about it is it's corrupting like our adolescence in a way, and retroactively, because when I think of Vlade Divac, and I think of Peja, and I think of Chris Webber, and I think of Doug Christie, and I think of Mike Bibby, and I think of Bobby J, and, go down the list, Scott Pollard, I get a nice little hit of dopamine. Like, it makes me feel good. And so for you to take that thing and to exploit it, and to then now, because of what you're doing, give me a negative reaction when I think of Vlade. And now I'm getting a negative reaction when I think of Doug Christie. Peja's here or there, whatever, but I guess he was the assistant GM. Like, at the end of the day, Sam nails it. Those teams were great, and they should hold a special place in our heart. But it's time, as we've said, to nuke the nostalgia. We got to move past this. Like, this is not like, this could be a thing that, like, I don't know, one night a year we do like early 2000s night, and we, that's what this needs to be. This is not something that we should still be talking about, because you look like the guy who played football in high school. You look like Al Bundy. You're still talking about playing high school football 20 years later. And it's like, the world's moved on. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then I want to address one other thing real quick. I hear a lot of Kings fans say it's like the effort, or it's like trying, or like, look, I have no doubt in my mind that Doug Christie really wants this for us, and he really wants to win. And I have no doubt that Vivek really wants this for us. But, like, I also really want, I would love to play small forward for the Kings.
Right. You can want a lot of things.
You can want a lot of things.
Right.
At the end of the day, like, there's an innate ability that has to come into play. Right. I don't know if Doug possesses that ability. The early returns are not good on it, so I would guess he doesn't have that ability, at least at this point in time. Vivek has demonstrated over 13 years that he doesn't have that ability.
For sure.
I'm 5'11", so I'm not playing small forward for the Kings. Like, that's not going to be a thing that happens. So you need to figure out, okay, you have DeMar DeRozan, you have Zach LaVine. They're not going to play defense. Like, they're not. Even if they try, they're not. So, like, getting mad at the effort is, I think, misguided. And I think that that's unfortunately what I'm seeing a lot of on Kings Twitter is like, oh, the effort. It's like, look, I really don't care about the effort. I care about wins and losses, because you win by winning. And you lose by losing, by the way. That's the corollary.
That's how it works.
That's how it works, right? Like, I don't care. What happens in the NBA primarily, you saw this with the Denver game, you saw this with the last Oklahoma City game, is that these guys have 82 games. They're not giving their effort the entire 48 minutes. They're not. Bad teams have to give effort 48 minutes. They just coast until like 8 minutes left in the game, and then they turn it on and they blow out the bad team. So that's why when the Kings have always been battled this time, they hang around, the Cousins years, the early Fox years, and then they end up just like losing the game in the fourth quarter. And we as fans think, oh, they were so close. And it's like, no, that's not what's happening, guys. Because at the end of the day, yes, the effort thing matters, but the talent thing matters a lot more.
Right. Well, I think I do agree on the defensive effort side of things. So I do think that defense is largely effort based. I think we talked about that last time. But to your point, these guys are not defensive minded people, and these guys are deep into their careers. These are not new guys who you're trying to develop at this point. So to try to pretend like you're going to turn Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan into defensive minded folks, it's just not going to happen. But back really quick, I wanted to address something on the nostalgia front. I do think that what we're seeing with Doug Christie is probably the most egregious violation of that, or manipulation of our thought process on those early Kings. And the reason I say that is because I think Vlade had a legitimate chance to succeed. I think Vlade was put in a position where he just made bad choices, and he was given an opportunity to succeed, and he made some bad choices that got him in a bad spot. I think with Doug Christie, there was no chance he was going to succeed this year. No chance. And now we are at a place with him where he can't even be judged by wins and losses at this point, which is a very dangerous place to get to with your head coach, because you win by winning and you lose by losing. And at this point, his entire job has to be to develop the young talent and to make the hard decisions with the veteran talent that we have on the team. Again, for example, you have to have Keegan Murray playing the 3 if that is the position you're going to have Keegan Murray playing throughout the remainder of his career. You cannot spend 2, 3, 4 years with him at the 4 and then be like, but eventually once we get somebody to replace him, he's going to go to the 3, because he hasn't been developing at the 3. He's been developing at the 4. Which means you're going to have to bench.
How many years has it been? Like, how long does it take to get a effing power forward on your roster?
That's what I mean. And so
like, they haven't had a power forward on their roster the entire time Murray's been on the team.
But the problem is Doug is thinking, if I play him at the 4, maybe that gives us a better chance to win right now. And it's like, dude, you cannot, like, you can't be expected to try. Of course, season's over, but you can't be expected to try to win games anymore. Like, the goal has to be develop the talent. Because again, maybe you're right. Maybe you can put him at the 4 and you might win some more games. But if that's not his long-term position, then you're wasting time. And so I think that getting to this place with Doug, where I think we all agree Doug is not long for this position, I do not see a scenario where I don't see a scenario where he gets a new contract. Again, I don't know how you're going to lose a bunch of games this year and obviously next year, and then we're going to say this is going great, let's re-sign this guy. I just don't think it happens. So this is the most sacrificial lamb that I've seen one of our early 2000s people have to go through. I don't see it getting any better going forward.
Okay, so I want to put up a tweet. Obviously, this is audio, so our listeners aren't going to see it, but I'm going to read it. And, not the biggest Damian Barling fan. I just want to put that out there. But when someone's got a point, they got a point. And, I got to tip my hat to him. So he tweeted out last night after the game, DeMar DeRozan has no interest in playing for the Sacramento Kings. Don't make him. Sit him. Doug Christie won't see a second season as coach. Pretty sure Scott Perry and his front office wanted it that way. This entire organization is an embarrassment for so many reasons. Okay. So as far as Scott Perry not wanting it that way in terms of Doug Christie being a coach beyond this season, this again is why you don't hire a coach before you hire a general manager. And this is the third time now that the Kings have hired a coach before they've hired a general manager. Now, well, actually, I could hear the listeners, and you were probably about to say, but Toke, wait a minute. Actually, they hired Scott Perry first.
Right.
And they gave Scott Perry, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, the option of keeping Doug on board. Do you actually believe that?
No, of course not. Of course not.
I don't.
No, but I actually do believe that Doug Christie will make it through his second season, because again,
is that next season or is that this season?
Next season.
Okay.
I think he'll make it through next season, because you have to have somebody in that position as you go through a major rebuild, which is exactly what the Kings are about to go through. And why not make it the lowest paid coach in the league by, what was it, 40%? He's paid 40% lower than the next highest coach.
I believe that's the number that I came across.
So if you're Vivek, and we know how Vivek operates, and you're Scott Perry, why not keep him there? What would be the point? Again, are you going to bring someone else in to win some more games? That's not the goal anymore. It's just not the goal anymore.
I think you should leave him in place. At least because like, what is there to gain by firing him now? Okay, you put Mike Woods in there. Like, is that the answer to anything? I think just keep him in place.
Let's say Mike was to win 10 more games. Does that help us? It doesn't help us.
I mean, whether it help, like the way I would look at it is, does Doug being in that position hamper the development of the young guys you have on the team? And there could be a case for that. You know, he's not playing Nick Clifford enough minutes.
Is that his choice?
Whose choice is it? He's the head coach.
Do you think he has full autonomy to choose his starting lineups and choose who plays how many minutes and all that good stuff?
I mean, I think if Scott Perry had his way, we'd probably be seeing the young guys play a little more. I mean, what's Scott Perry's incentive to write it out with the 37-year-olds?
I think you have to have these guys playing so that you can use them as trade chips.
I don't think so, man. I think everyone knows exactly who DeMar DeRozan is, and everyone knows exactly who Zach LaVine is. I mean, last year when the Kings stupidly traded for Zach LaVine, the Chicago Bulls literally just told him, go, your wife is 9 months pregnant, be with your wife, and you don't need to show up. Like, Zach LaVine's been in the league for like 12 years.
Listen, I understand these guys are known commodities, but I think it put, as from a negotiation standpoint, it puts you in a weird spot to say we're going to essentially bench Zach LaVine and essentially bench DeMar DeRozan, and then go out and see what kind of value you can get for them. They have to be starters because you're trading them as the value of starters, or at least that's the hope. I mean, and if these guys are riding the bench, then you're not going to, the value's going to, you're going to kill yourself in the negotiations.
Okay. So I want to switch gears briefly. I mean, this is all related, but anyway, whatever. We saw a trade proposal from Bill Simmons. It was kind of like a who says no to this type thing. And I'll read it out. Bill Simmons says, this is a good who says no. You have Anthony Simons, John Collins, and Bogdan Bogdanovic coming to the Kings. You have the Clippers getting Zach LaVine and Dario Saric, and you have Malik Monk going to the Celtics. The Clippers get desperately needed scoring, get LaVine. I think the idea there is Steve Ballmer doesn't care about the luxury tax, so, you know, whatever.
Right.
Boston gets under the tax for 2 extra Monk years, and Monk could probably help them whenever Jason Tatum gets back. And then Sacramento gets $70 million of expirings and cap space this summer. So you basically undo the damage you did by taking on Zach LaVine without having to give up any assets. That's the long and the short of it. What are your thoughts, Geoff?
Let's press go right now.
I mean, to go back to what Bill Simmons is saying, who says no?
I don't know. I don't know who would say no.
Maybe the Clippers. Maybe they figured they could do better than Zach LaVine.
Yeah, I doubt it, but maybe. I mean, it's like you said. If you could put Zach LaVine in a system where he's going to get you the 30 points a game, you know, that is valuable. Again, I don't think I've never seen him in a winning system where he gives you 30 points a game. So, you know, don't get me wrong, but I think the Clippers would be into it. Certainly they have their 3 expiring, or I should say their 2 expiring. I think Bogey has 1 more year on his deal after this. You know, they might be in a position where they would want to keep those guys and let them expire and go use that cap space on somebody else. But to your point, are you going to find somebody who's going to be able to give you 30 a night? I don't know.
So I want to like extrapolate this a little bit. Like, what would you do with that cap space? Because obviously you're not signing anyone. It gives you more flexibility with trades. You know, it could save you. I think what you have to do if you're the Kings, actually, this is something I would copy from Oklahoma City. You use your cap space to take back bad contracts with assets attached to them
Exactly.
Like, that's actually the play that works, because it's like, I have this. Okay, for those who are familiar with investing, there's something known as the efficient market hypothesis, where it doesn't matter what bit of news comes out, it's already priced into the asset, it's already priced into the stock. So if you want to buy Boeing, like, unless you have insider knowledge, you're not going to have like some sort of hidden way of saying, no, the price should be this when the price is that. I don't believe in the efficient market hypothesis. I actually think that a lot of the geniuses in our civilization, they come about by bucking the trend. And I think right now in the NBA, to kind of get to the point, there's this fear of like spending money. It's an overcorrection. Everyone's worried about the aprons and the collective bargaining agreement and all that stuff. And I actually think when everyone is zigging, you should zag. I think go into the luxury tax, take on bad contracts, and get assets for them. I mean, if you think about it, not only did Oklahoma City do this, not only is Brooklyn currently doing this, is the only team with cap room, but this is what the Spurs did. This is how they got Harrison Barnes from us. This is how they got a pick swap from us in the in 2030 or 2031 or whenever it was. Like, just being that team that can facilitate gets you these little assets. And then, like I said, you don't look at a late first round pick as, well, this is slated to be a position that averages 11 points a game. No. This is a shot. You're trying to get players, right? Like, that's, and you need more shots, because right now you get one shot a year functionally in the draft if you don't acquire more draft picks. And there's plenty of teams out there that are willing to mortgage their future because they feel like they're one or two picks away, or one or two players away from actually contending. So I think that you need to zag while everyone else is zigging.
I don't disagree. The only part about this trade that I would be a little disappointed in is I would like to keep Malik Monk on this team, especially if we're going into a rebuild, because I think he plays the right way and he plays with energy, and he is the kind of guy that I want the young guys looking up to. I want Neat Clifford watching what Malik Monk is doing. Same reason I want Westbrook on the team if we're going to go into a full rebuild. It's like, guys that play the game a certain way, I think we should try our hardest to hold on to. But of course, those are going to be the guys that other teams are interested in.
Is there any way we could make that Schroeder instead of Monk?
Yeah, absolutely. If we can make it Schroeder, let's just do that.
Okay, so I want to play something. It's a little bit long, but I think it's very important. We could pause along the way if you want, Jeff. You just let me know.
Sure.
But I think that this is like really, really important stuff from James Ham and Kyle Madson.
But I want to get to your question, because you asked, would they go into the luxury tax to make this deal happen?
For the trade that we're talking about here.
I don't think Vivek Ranadive has done a good job. Salute. He was helped facilitate the Kings staying in Sacramento. Awesome. That's something that people will forever be indebted to him for. I get it. But I would go as far as to say he owes it to people and owes it to Kings fans.
Yep.
To go into the luxury tax to make this type of deal happen.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, like, look, there's a lot of ways to expedite a rebuild, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of those ways is to give out draft picks in order for someone to take on a contract like a Zach LaVine or a Domantas Sabonis, like to get out from underneath those. There's a possibility that you do have to give up something, right? A deal like this, though, yeah, I'm in. And if the cost is, losing out on the $13 million in luxury tax expenditures that teams under the cap get, which is what they roughly what they got last year.
Sure.
And it also costs you a couple of million to go over the cap and a couple of million in luxury dollars. like it could be a $15 or $20 million like
I don't
hit.
care. I don't care.
I don't either, because a $15 or $20 million hit versus giving up draft capital, first round picks to get off of these players. Yeah, I'm in. I don't care.
And they're in this mess because of him. Like, dude, if you're in this place where you can make this deal and what is prohibitive is the luxury tax, sell the basketball team.
Yeah.
Yep.
You don't get to own the team anymore. If that's not, if cost is going to be prohibitive to tear this thing down and get it going in some direction that isn't into the pits of hell, then what are we doing?
Yep.
Then why do you have a team? If you're not going to go, yeah, hey, you know what amounts to pennies?
But do you not fully believe that Vivek is the kind of guy who would penny pinch? Because I am fully on board with the thoughts that he's a penny pincher, and he's not the kind of guy who says, screw it, I'll drop 15 or 20 million to help the fans get out of this or help the team get out of this. Again, I think that he looks at this from a business perspective as a success. And I know he goes to the games and I know he wants the team to win, kind of like in quotes, but clearly he does almost everything he can to find the opposite results. So what makes anyone think that he's the kind of guy that would go in and say, we'll take the hit so that we can get out of here quicker?
So this is the same guy, just to kind of answer your question, that gave Mike Brown a new contract and then fired him before the new contract even started.
Right.
So, I mean, he's also the same guy who fired Mike Malone, hired Tyrone Corbin, took the interim tag off Tyrone Corbin, gave him a contract as a full-time head coach, and 27 or 21 games later or whatever it was, I think it was 27 games later, fired him and paid George Karl to come in and coach the team. So, I mean, there are some examples of him like just burning money. Obviously, he's doing it in as stupid a way as possible. But
so I agree. But this is also the same guy who's paying our current coach the least of any coach by 40%. So
he is, but he was paying the Mike Brown contract still, number one. And number two, the time that he did that contract with Doug Christie, I don't think Mike Brown had been hired by New York. So some of Mike Brown's salary does get offset now that he's employed. There's some provision, I think, in the contract. Right. So, okay, maybe he's saving like another $3 million from the Mike Brown contract. And it's like, well, okay. Look, I don't think he's going to do it. Like, let me just put that out there. And we'll go back. I think the conversation and what Kyle is talking about here is he owes it to us. Whether he lives up to something that he owes to us or not is a different conversation. So let's go back.
I know $15-20 million is an insane amount of money to us, but in this business, in this, like, hey, 15-20 million, and I get to slam the reset button a year early.
Yeah.
Like, yes, especially when you're the guy who wanted Zach LaVine in the first place.
Facts.
Yep.
Like, you've done this. This is on you, dog. You don't get to, if you're Vivek, you don't get to go, oh no, hang on, we're penny pinching. No. That's not how this works at all. And if he's not ready to go into the luxury tax to make a deal like this happen, then I don't know what we're doing here. Because that is losing. Because I typically agree with Kenny on this when he goes, they'll make the playoffs a couple of years in a row eventually while Vivek owns the team. Like, eventually that'll happen. And I agree with him typically.
Maybe.
But if they're not willing to go into the luxury tax for this, then I would very much be in the camp with the people who are like, never. As long as Vivek owns the team, never. Because that is just such a direct... It is directly competing with what is best for the team. And if your owner's not willing to do what's best for the team, I don't know what we're doing.
Well, yeah, that, and Kyle, I think, like the old adage, like a broken clock is right twice a day.
Yes.
Right? That sure does feel like what Beam Team 1 was. The original Beam Team
1,000%
was just a broken clock was right once.
Yep.
And then after that, you weren't able to build anything because you just wouldn't invest the rest of the way. Like the first team, they should have gone out at the trade deadline and added.
Mhm.
The next summer when they go out and add Chris Duarte, that wasn't enough.
Mhm.
I mean, it was like a super, super budget move that cost you 2 second-round picks and was over and done with by trade deadline,
Mhm.
right? The guy's not even in the league.
Mhm.
So like
Ugh.
there are these moves that you make,
Jeez.
but like at what point are you going to go into a trade deadline and actually go out and do something to push your team over the top? Like I hate telling Kings fans this, but Pascal Siakam, that deal, it could have given the Kings a championship.
Mhm.
I don't know for sure, but I certainly know he's been in the Eastern Conference Finals 2 years in a row. That could have been a deal that made you a full-fledged contender, and you didn't do it because you didn't want to extend him and pay the money.
Yes.
Crazy talk.
That's insane.
That is
just
truly
brutal.
insane.
Yep. Reality.
And so I could not agree more that with the broken clock analogy that he used. Because right when Kyle was saying, I think they're going to win the playoffs, they're going to make the playoffs multiple years in a row. I don't know what would give him the indication that that's going to happen.
He's a Warriors fan, so he's
Okay.
used to
being in the playoffs.
a functional organization.
Because there is absolutely no evidence that would suggest that's going to happen. And so I don't know what moves he thinks are going to be made where that's going to happen. I think personally that we are in the very beginning stages of another very long drought, unless again somehow this thing becomes functional. We sell the team, Vivek sells the team, and we get somebody in here who knows what they're doing. But until then, I think we're back in the pits of hell.
Let's analyze, because we just brought up the Warriors, and I'm not a Warriors hater. I don't really care about the Warriors. I'm like old school. I hate the Lakers. That's like the team I hate. Like the Warriors what I don't like is Warrior fans. Like we're all of a sudden, like I lived my whole life in Sacramento, never having
they used to
met
be Kings fans.
No, they used to be Laker fans, is what they used to be. But anyway, that's another story. Let's analyze the way that the Warriors handle. I mean, I have to go back to the De'Aaron Fox trade. Sorry, guys, but nothing better encapsulates the Vivek stewardship of the franchise than the De'Aaron Fox trade. And let's compare that to the way the Warriors handled Jonathan Kuminga. They said, no, we're not going to just give you what you want. Jonathan Kuminga wanted to come to the Kings this summer. And not only did Jonathan Kuminga want to come to the Kings, when they were in Sacramento, what was it? The last time the Kings won a game, when they were in town, Jonathan Kuminga apparently was telling everyone in the locker room, this is where I should be playing this year. And he was just pissed off that he was still on the Warriors. The Warriors don't care, because the Warriors, at the end of the day, had just enough leverage over Jonathan Kuminga to make him re-sign there, and now they're going to use him as a trade chip at some point this season, maybe to the Kings even, to get more than Devin Carter and a second-round pick. Now, when Vivek was in a similar situation where he had a player who did not want to play here anymore, he said, just give him what he wants. Oh, and let's go get Zach LaVine.
Right. By the way, a player who didn't want to play here, who told him he wasn't going to play here if they fired the coach. And then they fired the coach and did not have a plan in place for De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of don't buy that, but whatever. It's just like, or the Utah Jazz are another good example. Ace Bailey comes out before the draft and says, I do not want to play in Utah. Danny Ainge says, that's cool, bro. We're going to do what's best for our franchise. That's actually how you get things done in the business world, in the NBA, in other pro sports. Like Scott Perry says, he wants volunteers, not hostages. Personally, I don't care whether they're volunteers or hostages. These guys are getting paid millions of dollars.
They're getting paid millions of dollars.
Okay. Sign me up for that hostage situation. Like
Yep.
DeMar DeRozan, Sabonis, these guys are miserable right now because they're
I
on
would say, does it?
a
By the way,
losing
does it
team.
seem like we have volunteers or hostages right now?
Yeah,
Feels a lot like we got a lot of hostages.
right. So when Sabonis asked for a trade, which I think he probably has already behind the scenes, now he has a torn meniscus and that complicates things and whatever. But like, you can't now do to Sabonis what you did with Fox because, like, you already did that with Fox. So you've already shot yourself in the foot once. Like, you have to extract some value out of Sabonis when you trade him. And
right.
like, it's not going to be what the return should have been for Fox. I understand that. You know, Sabonis is on a bad contract. But with that being said, like, you can't just salary dump like an asset you have when you don't have a lot of assets to begin with. So, I mean, you know, until Vivek figures, and hopefully Scott Perry, who has a very mixed record up to this point as general manager of the team, hopefully Vivek and Scott Perry, or hopefully Scott Perry can put Vivek in check enough to not do something like that again. My money's not on that happening. My money's on this continuing to spiral out of control. At some point, Vivek's going to have to feel like this isn't fun anymore, and he could get $5 billion for the team.
Right.
But, you know, like, it just, there's nothing to, there. As Grant said on the post-game show last night, or I think it was Jerry, quoting Mitch Richmond in the early 90s. Mitch, do you see any light at the end of the tunnel? And Mitch said, I don't even see the tunnel.
Incredible.
That's where we're at.
That is exactly where we're at. I had a thought last night as I was watching the game. Our most valuable trade asset is probably Keegan Murray. Would you be open to including him in a trade package that would bring back primarily draft assets?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, it depends, like, obviously, what the...
Sure, if someone's going to give five
right,
first, then yeah.
I think one of the things... So you got to know your strengths and you got to know your weaknesses. And having a lot of draft picks when you're Sam Presti and you're good at drafting matters a lot more than when you're the Kings and you're not good at drafting, right? So, like, to me, in a lot of these situations, I would rather get a young prospect than a draft pick. So at least you have some body of work within the NBA to work off of. I think that that's a more interesting route to go with a lot of this, because draft picks, they have this weird, like, they can kind of be whatever you want them to be. You know, if you're pessimistic and you think that you're not going to be a good drafter, they're worthless. But if you think that, you know, somehow you're going to get the number one pick when Wemby's coming out, draft picks are super, like, valuable.
Okay.
Whereas, like, you take a player, ironically, like Keegan Murray, and it's like you kind of have an idea what he is and what he could be in the league. You don't know, like, with a 19-year-old kid, yeah, he's dunking on fools in college. Like, is that going to work in the NBA?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
it's like they're basically different sports functionally. So
right.
I wouldn't.
Because my thought process is we keep making these same mistakes where we find guys who are good on the Kings. Good on the Kings. So let's say Sabonis and Keegan Murray. I think we can agree we overpaid both those guys. Sabonis by an incredible margin. I think it's widely considered he has one of the worst contracts in the league. And instead of continuing to go down this road where we basically, it's like they're the best we have and we have to give them, you know, number 2 guy or number 1 guy on the team money, even though they really shouldn't be number 2 or number 1 guy. We got to be much quicker to trade these guys. We got to be. We should have been much quicker to trade Keon Ellis when his stock was high last year. If we didn't think he was going to be like a guy, we needed to be much quicker to move on from him. And so
or
I think
you lock him up at a reasonable price.
Sure, that's fine too. That's what I'm trying to say is like the guys that we're locking up need to be your third, fourth, fifth option, but we have to lock them up at first or second option money because that's what they are for the Kings, but that's not what they are league wide. And so once they're locked into that contract, there's no option to move on from them. And so I think Keegan still has enough trade value where you could move on from him and you could get something good back in return. Whereas as this rebuild goes on, who knows what Keegan is? Who knows what he is when he's expected to be the number 2 guy on the team, which I think when all is said and done, that's what he's going to have to be behind Sabonis, if Sabonis is even around. Okay,
so here's kind of like something that I'm very mindful of, because I used to be very much like trade people for draft picks and whatever. I remember when I was in college, the Dallas Mavericks traded Devin Harris for Jason Kidd to the, at the time, New Jersey Nets.
Mm-hmm.
And Devin Harris, a lot of our listeners might not even know who that was, but he was a young guard. He was good, and he had a lot of potential to, maybe be a star one day, right? And Jason Kidd was like 34 or 35 at the time, or he was up there. And at the time, I remember thinking to myself, like, why would Dallas do that? Why would they trade for a guy who's like at the end of his career? Like, do they really think that they're going to win a championship with Jason Kidd?
Right.
Well, they did win a championship with Jason Kidd, but that's not the reason I'm bringing it up. The bottom line, though, is Devin Harris never was as good in his career in the final analysis as Jason Kidd was that day that they made the trade. Not prime Jason Kidd. We're talking about 34-year-old Jason Kidd. And so when I look at someone like Keegan Murray, the odds, this is the math I'm doing. The odds that you're going to trade Keegan for a draft pick that is ever going to be as good as Keegan Murray is, which is not even that great, but given the Kings draft record, that right there is what gives me pause. Is like, you need to look at it like, even with the contract that Keegan's going to get, and even with his personality flaws as a passive guy and all that,
right,
he's still a known commodity, and you're really like trying to project out value onto something that might not be valuable in the final analysis.
Well, and see, I think I've changed my thought process on the Kings and the draft in general, which is our only shot at legitimate success is going to be stumbling into an A player. That's our only shot. And so in order to stumble into an A player, you got to have as many shots at that as possible. And so because again, we know Keegan's not an A player. I think Keegan is, again, a third option on a decent team, maybe a fourth option on a decent team. And so if you can,
he's an elite 3-and-D guy. That's what he is.
Yeah, which is great, dude. And that's great
you need those guys on your team, but those aren't stars.
They're not stars, but they do have significant value because I would say he's a great 3-and-D guy if that's going to be his only role. So that is going to have significant value around the league for a team that's already relatively well established because they have the other pieces that are in place and they just need him to come in. But again, when you want him to be your second in command and your second best player, or maybe even, God forbid, your first best player, which I think there was a time where, after Keegan's rookie season, I think everyone was like, oh, dang, he might be a guy.
Peja.
Yeah, like he might be a guy.
He's not Peja.
Right. And so it's like, I think once you realize he's not going to be a guy, you got to move on and continue to try to take those shots and continue to try to stumble your way in. We've proven an inability to do it strategically. Now we have to do it by accident.
So to contradict our podcast from earlier, let's go back to the early 2000s Kings for half a second. The way that the Kings got Chris Webber, which was that guy, and like whether Chris Webber was like the best that guy or not, like they didn't win a championship, whatever.
But he was a guy.
He was a guy.
Yeah.
Well, what they did was they once upon a time drafted Billy Owens, who, like similar to Ace Bailey, did not want to come to Sacramento. And they traded him to Oakland at the time for Mitch Richmond. Mitch Richmond suffered for years here in Sacramento, and then at the very end of his prime, you traded Mitch for Chris Webber, who was a depreciated asset. He was a former number 1 pick.
Right.
Never really, he had stats. He did well, but he never made like an all-star team or anything. Yep. I don't think, in Washington.
Had an attitude problem.
He had a drug charge. So you traded for this undervalued asset, and you brought in Chris Webber, and then you made a bunch of other moves, and it all kind of lined up. There was no number 1 pick that you got that led to those early 2000s teams. So what I'm trying to say, I guess, is you need to get that guy however you can, and if it's having a lot of shots at the draft, that's one fishing line you could throw out, you could cast out. But I think you need to be open to these other avenues. And I don't think that taking a player like Keegan Murray and just saying we're just going to put as many fishing lines as possible in the draft is smart. Like, you might actually be better off looking at the John Moran situation. I wouldn't want him in particular, just looking at how dysfunctional we are. You need like a strong culture before you bring in someone like that. But while you're stabilizing the franchise and building an infrastructure that could take on someone like that, like, that's probably when I would look to move Keegan, not for draft picks.
Do you think that, first of all, do you think that our front office is strong enough to identify somebody who could potentially have a young talent who could develop into something different? Because again, I think it's one of those things where, like, I think you got to luck into it. I hate to go back to the De'Aaron Fox trade, but
that was your shot. That was your shot to reload, and you didn't do it.
100%. And if you could have gotten Stephen Castle out of there, that is a young talent who could have added something to your team. And obviously that was a, swing and miss, and we all know how that went. But I think it all has to happen by accident at this point, because I don't trust the front office to go out and identify a young talent that we could trade Keegan Murray for and then develop him into something. I think you got to go out and find a guy who was always going to be a guy, right? That it's not to say that you're always going to go on. There's not always a Wemby in the draft available, but that is the only path to success that I see for the Kings at this point, because they haven't proven any other ability to get to a successful team.
I'm gonna put one more Damian Barling tweet up, and I'm gonna read it, and I think this will be a pretty good closing note, unless you have anything else you want to discuss. So Damian tweeted out also after the game, 49ers fans said their team will never win with Jed York as the owner. His team went 13-3 4 seasons later. Warrior fans said they won't win under Joe Lacob. 5 years later, they won a title. 12 years later, they've won 4. 13 years of Vivek Ranadive. Kings fans were right.
I'm not even sure anything else needs to be said.
Well, I mean, I don't know, man. It's tough out there. So I guess we can close it out on Thanksgiving. What are you thankful for when it comes to the Sacramento Kings this year, Jeff?
Oh boy. I'm thankful that we get an opportunity for a brand new team. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I think when we look at this team next year and the year after, there might be one or two of the same faces, but we'll have an opportunity to see a whole new team. And I'm thankful for that, because this team is awful.
So here's what I'm thankful for. I'm thankful did, because functionally it starts the process a lot sooner. Go Kings.
Go Kings.